Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of F1 22, my team career mode here on the channel. Today we are heading to my favorite Grand Prix in the world. You guys know I love Singapore so much, and we are headed here today, fresh off of the Singapore Grand Prix in real life after the return from COVID. But look at this, we have a retirement announcement to kick off this episode. Sergio Perez is going to be calling it a career at the conclusion of the second season of this my team career mode. So he's got a handful of races left, and then he is going to be departing from the Alpine team and from F1 in general. So there's a guaranteed big seat open. Alpine has had an incredible season. They started out way stronger than they have been lately, however, but they've still been a very competitive team. And you see right here on the R&D, actually, they're pretty even with us right now, but usually they've been having the edge. You know, it shows us right now ahead of them on the R&D, but I can guarantee you we are not going to be beating them here today, and we haven't beat them lately. So coming off of a disappointing Italian Grand Prix episode there with our second straight mechanical failure. So we have yet to make it to the halfway point of the Italian GP in Monza, but hopefully next season we can do that. But coming here into Singapore, you know, it doesn't matter what the situation is, I'm always happy to be at Singapore. I love this Grand Prix. This is one of my bucket list Grand Prix in real life. I would love to get to see this IRL at some point before I die. So we'll see if that ever happens now, as it'd probably be a bit of an expensive Grand Prix to go to, however, so it'll be difficult. But we come through to practice, and ever since F1 2021, the practice programs at Singapore for myself have been very difficult to complete, and I've had to rely this game on the quick practice options. So I wasn't really expecting to beat the criteria or the deltas that we had set for us, and you can already see with the time delta there on the top right of the screen that I was going in the negatives. Things weren't going very well. Wasn't too concerned because I knew this was the trend that I always have here, so I was really just focused on race pace at this point here. Now, as you can actually see, I would make a bit of a mistake right there, lose the back end. I would crash the car out of practice, so we have an early ending to practice, and we're gonna have to focus on practice 2 and practice 3. So we didn't even complete a whole lap here in free practice 1. That's how bad it was. But you know, there's 3 tracks on the schedule that I consider myself to really struggle in practice and qualifying, and that's Singapore, COTA, as well as Brazil. Unfortunately, those 3 races all come in the last part of the season, and usually we have way better race pace than our qualifying or practice, and we jump right into qualifying. And do keep in mind, you saw on the leaderboard, we do have that 10 grid place penalty due to the new part that we had to put on the car because of the fact that we had a mechanical failure in the Italian Grand Prix. So we're already on the back foot coming into this weekend here, and we're probably going to be starting right at the back, but I was anticipating starting at the back no matter what, because like we were just talking about, one of the 3 tracks where my qualifying pace usually just is not there, and I don't know why. I think it's just because of the AI difficulty or something when it comes to qualifying here in Singapore, COTA, as well as Brazil. But you can see me making my lap, and I was hitting my marks. It wasn't that bad of a lap. There was a couple moments that were a little bit sloppy, so it would force me, of course, to make a second attempt. But we had come through to cross the line originally, P16, the last driver in, but we come through to start now our second and final lap here late in the session. We're going to come out in traffic actually with Charles Leclerc, who is going to impede my lap a little bit here, and I lose a little bit of time, but I did gain that time back, and I went into the positive here within this first sector, and we were looking about half a tenth better. It wasn't much. It was right on that fine line, and I was just looking for as much time as I could find, but we had only found about a tenth to 2/10 of a second. I mean, that could be still a big gain position-wise. Then we come up on this mess here with Latifi as well as Piastri, and look at this, Latifi impedes my lap as well. We were now up 6/10, nearly 7/10 of a second. We found way more time in the second sector. However, we just lost a couple right there because of Nicholas Latifi, and I'm not going to have enough battery to be able to get a competitive second lap in, so I just stuck with it on this one here now, and we find 7/10 of a second here as we head through the final couple of corners now through the sweeping left-hander. It'll be about 7/10. It only goes P14, and as you could expect, it would get a lot worse than that as we would be down to P17. As I decided though to stick it through one more lap, you can see I was running out of battery. Actually, the battery held on way better than I anticipated, but we find about another 4/10 nearly of a second. We crossed the line. It still wasn't enough. P19, I believe it said. Yes, it is. P19 is where we end up qualifying, which means we'll be starting from the very back of the grid with the grid penalty that we have. Poor Chair up there in P11, he would move on. We have some work to do in Singapore, and what is going to be a very, very interesting Grand Prix in terms of weather that I will explain at the end of the pre-race, but rain, dry, rain again looks like what we might be dealing with. Let's head to the grid.
Against the spectacular backdrop of the Singapore skyline, Formula One returns once again to do battle in what tends to become something of an endurance race, with the notorious sauna-like temperatures in the cockpit making for an extremely physically challenging race. We have a high risk of a safety car here today, I think, as the abundance of tight corners mixed with these wet conditions could put a few cars off and into the barriers. 23 turns then, 13 to the left and 10 to the right, make up the 3.1-mile lap of Marina Bay. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. An immense lap from Lewis Hamilton yesterday puts him on pole position. And starting next to them is George Russell. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Bottas, Lando Norris and Sainz, Perez, Vettel, Ocon and Théo Pourchaire, Gasly, Ricciardo, Max Verstappen. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. And Albon, Joe, Oscar Piastri, Lance Stroll and Kevin Magnussen, Latifi, Mick Schumacher, Tsunoda and Golden Boy. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today? Anthony Davison is alongside me today, nice and dry up here in the commentary box. How are you, Ant? Looking forward to this race?
I'm very well, thank you. I forgot my umbrella on the way up to the box, so I'm a bit soggy, but I'll dry out soon enough. It's going to be an interesting race in this weather. Obviously, your strategy changes completely once it starts raining, as overtaking is a lot easier in the wet. The focus moves away from pure aerodynamic efficiency and tyre management, and of course, the driver themselves can always make more of a difference in these conditions than in the dry.
If these were the conditions in real life here in Singapore, they would have not even thought of starting that Grand Prix after what we saw in real life on Sunday. However, we are ready to go. Lights out here in the pouring rain in the Singapore Grand Prix on the wet compound tire. But what it is scheduled to do is it's going to rain, it's going to go down to more intermediate conditions, then it's going to completely dry out, but then it's looking like there's the potential within the final 10 laps of the Grand Prix for it to rain again. So we might actually go wet, intermediate, dry compound tire, be that a hard, soft, medium, I'm thinking medium, and then back to a potential intermediate. But it's 5 red lights, and we are lights out and underway, and it's Lewis Hamilton who leads the way down into turn 1, but his teammate George Russell with a pretty solid start here. He's going to be alongside as they head down into the first corner. Contact there between Russell and Hamilton, and I saw Ferrari try to look up the inside there. The re-wide, and that was Charles Leclerc there, the former defending world champion who we have pretty much written off realistically of competing for a championship this season after a really strong first, 3, 4, 5 Grand Prix. It was looking like he was going to go back-to-back world championships for a moment, but then all of a sudden everything fell apart, starting in, I believe it was the Spanish Grand Prix and leading into Monaco, and then all the way through into this part of the season. Now it's just not been the greatest for Leclerc. He's on a bit of a winless streak as well here, as you can see Lando Norris settling in behind the Ferrari of Valtteri Bottas. As well, you got George Russell, who definitely not the start he was looking for. Sebastian Vettel in the mix, and there you see Esteban Ocon side by side with Carlos Sainz in the McLaren right there. Sainz going to take the position, runs a little bit wide. Pourchaire settling in as well, and I was settling in, and unfortunately, you guys know the wet conditions have not been very favorable for me in this F122 My Team career mode, so I was not looking forward to this portion of the Grand Prix, and it was proving itself because I had actually gained a couple of positions, however, but I was already feeling the struggles of my pace here, so I really didn't know what to expect. But Hamilton continues to lead the way, and Hamilton needs to win to continue to close that gap to Max Verstappen here in this World Drivers' Championship. It gets closer and closer, and we'll see what happens here at the end of this, what could be a very big strategy changing race here with the weather that we're going to be dealing dealing with. You can see how much I'm slipping and sliding around, trying to hold back Tsunoda as well as Mick Schumacher. Look at the field, by the way. So negative 1.8 laps of field. That's the big thing to pay attention to, because if it stays wet for as long as it's originally scheduled for, that's going to be about the halfway point of the Grand Prix. We should be okay. The field should balance itself out, because when you are in the wet conditions, it is unbelievably easy to save fuel because your pace is so slow. So you can be pushing as hard as possible in the wet conditions, and your fuel is still going to be going in the right direction. And you can see, though, lap 3, I'm struggling to maintain contact with Nicholas Latifi, of all people, in the Williams now. Remember, in the Singapore Grand Prix yesterday, he absolutely bodozed poor Zhou Guanyu into the barrier. I don't know what in the world Nicholas was trying to do there in that whole situation. And as we came through now to lap 5, I actually had been able to balance out the gap a little bit. You can see the rain was letting up significantly. Everybody was about to flood into the pit lane because it was intermediate tire time already. And Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, the first two drivers in, they were driving away from third place on back. These two right now in a league of their own. Bottas as well as the McLaren, the Alpines, everybody's coming into the pit lane. We do have a few select drivers determining or deciding to stay out, like Esteban Ocon as well as Max Verstappen. But I myself flooded into the pit lane as well. There was enough of a gap between myself and Pourchaire to where the double stack wasn't going to cost me too much time. It might be an extra second or two, as you can see by the time I get here. Definitely about 2 seconds lost, but they're going to put on that intermediate compound tire, and we're going to lose a lot less time than other teams have. Now is actually a terribly unsafe pit release. Thankfully, we don't get penalized for that in this game, but we exit right behind Pierre Gasly. We got ahead of Nicholas Latifi, so that can show you the gains right there. So sometimes it works when you're way far behind your teammate. Now as we try to close that gap, though, to Pourchaire before this is over, and you can see by the time things settle out, lap 9, I was already getting recommended to go to the dry tire. It's still raining on the circuit, but all of a sudden we're being told that it's time to go on to a dry compound tire, which was a bit confusing. And no, it was happening just as quick as these intermediates went on. Hamilton and Leclerc, they're back into the pits and they're putting on these soft compound tires. So I was a bit confused by this, and this is Operation Oh No, because the fuel, this is not what I had planned for with the amount of fuel I put in the car. I decided to come in and put the medium compound tire on because I know it's supposed to rain again. We don't know when, because this is already unexpected based off of the weather forecast, which is approximate, not exact, so it's not surprising, but it's definitely unexpected. DRS immediately is enabled. Look how quick the track dries up compared to real life here in Singapore. Now as I come out in front of Tsunoda, and I know I'm going to be struggling here on the medium compound tire, he's going to have so much more grip and tires that are already warmed up, and he's going to blow right past me. But however, what's going to happen is that these AI, they are going to have to pit a lot earlier than I am, and they're going to have to make a whole pit stop probably before it rains again, versus myself, who hopefully will not. So we're trying to make up as much track position as we can with that strategy there. Latifi sends one up the inside. It doesn't work there, and we hold on to P20, but we have good pace in this car. Immediately I could tell there was pace in this car, especially in the dry conditions. However, with the way the strategies and the weather is so far working out, we find ourselves quite a ways behind here in 20th place. Yellow flags in front of us, lap 13. It's Tsunoda. Smoke pouring out of the back of Tsunoda's AlphaTauri Porsche, and he's going to be out of the Grand Prix. No virtual or physical safety car. We continue in green flag conditions. We would move up into now P18 as we're starting to try and juggle so many different things happening right here, because as well, you can see already lap 16, the drivers on the soft compound tires starting to come into the pit lane to put on a set of medium. So I'm gaining a bunch of track position now, but here's the situation. We don't know when that rain is coming again. I need to be in a position to save fuel because we are doing a lot more laps under dry conditions than I was anticipating. So I go into a mode of we're gonna have to save a whole bunch of fuel, more fuel than we've ever saved before, which was not what I was planning for here now, and it was all my mistake here in the pre-race fuel setup there. You can see everybody coming into the pit lane. We were closing in on Gasly and Zhou Guanyu, by the way, before they had come into the pit lane there. So like I said, there was good pace in this car. Hamilton and Leclerc, they've already completed their pit stops again, and they're out in front of us, but I was paying a lot of attention to the field, watching the bottom right of your screen with the throttle and brake tracker. You're going to notice I was starting to lift and coast because I was saving fuel. It was down to negative 0.88 laps, so we were nearly a full lap short, but we've saved nearly a whole lap because of the rain helping us earlier. Now I'm just hoping, please, please rain very soon here, because I don't think I can save that much time or save that much fuel with the time that we have without it raining here, as we go through a little bit of a late race update here. And I'm running P3 because everybody has pitted one extra time than I have, and that's why we're hoping as well for the rain to come out, because then it as well will increase our running position quite substantially. So it would be very nice as well, and a very nice strategy decision from the team. Max Verstappen running P10, a rough day for him, and that's a huge opportunity for Lewis Hamilton. I was giving up a ton of time on the track though, because of the fuel saving measures that I had put myself into now with the lift and coast. I was lifting and coasting into nearly every single corner, except for some of the really quick sweeping ones where you got to carry some momentum through to not lose too much time. So I was giving up a lot of time to make sure I saved the fuel, and it was just a matter of moments until Sebastian Vettel was all over the rear diffuser, and you can see him. He's going to lunge up the inside, but you can see I don't fight him, and then I once again lift and coast here into the corner and continue to save. Now negative 0.80, so the fuel is being saved, but it's, like I said, originally not going as quick as I would like, and I'm just hoping that that rain comes, because with the laps winding down, 10 laps to go, I'm not saving enough fuel here in time. George Russell with an aggressive move up the inside here as we go under the overpass there, but we hold on to P5, and next up was Lando Norris here, and I couldn't fight these guys because of the fuel that I was having to save, so I just had to let them all go, and just, like I said, hope that rain comes. So we're just kind of in a repetitive process of, they get to me, we let them go, we get the DRS that allows us to save a little bit more fuel actually at the end of the DRS rate that comes up here in a few corners, but Perez gets past us in his final Singapore Grand Prix there in the Alpine. Now to lap 25, here comes Valtteri Bottas. You can see how much time I'd lost, but look how much fuel we have saved. Now we're only about half a lap short, so we're getting closer, but it's still some work to be done here now as we continue to run in P8 now with a warning of potential rain on the way finally, but it's late in this Grand Prix. We just got turned from Daniel Ricciardo there, who lunged one up the inside. What was he thinking? And here's an onboard look with Ricciardo, the Australian, in the Alfa Romeo, sends one into the hairpin. I don't know, in my personal opinion, that was no fault of my own. I think that was all on Danny Rick, who absolutely sent it, and we had fallen down to P17, as well as we had a little bit of wing damage, but I was waiting for this. Lap 26, the rain is falling and the track was getting wet unbelievably quick. The same lap that it starts raining, I was being recommended to come into the pit lane actually from Marks. So DRS already disabled. Hamilton, Leclerc, they're already coming in to the pit lane here to put on the intermediate compound tires here within the final few laps of this Grand Prix, and them two have been in an absolute league of their own. And there's Hamilton in right now, and hold up a second, he is putting on the soft compound tire, and so is Leclerc. They're not putting on the wet tires, they're putting on the softs. Look at the track conditions by the time I come in, and in a sudden turn of events, every single car in front of us had come into the pit lane, but they all put on a set of soft compound tires, not intermediate compound tires. What in the world are they thinking? I mean, we're going to take it because we're going to come in and have an absolutely insane advantage after just getting wrecked by Daniel Ricciardo. We do have to replace the front wing. However, we're going to have an unbelievable advantage because the AI, they're going to have to pit again. Now, Piastri and Magnussen are in behind us, and you can see they actually have an issue getting the front wing on. But look at this. So Magnussen puts the soft compound tire on. Piastri and Schumacher were the only two other drivers to put on the intermediate compound tire, but look how quick I just drove past Magnussen, and we were hauling. We were 17 seconds behind, and then by the time we end the lap, we were 2 seconds behind Zhou Guanyu. 15-second difference. Everybody floods into the pit lane to put on now the intermediate compound tire. Hamilton and Leclerc pitted again, but they're so far out in front of everybody, and look at this. We settle out into P5, so suddenly, in what was an up and down Grand Prix to getting spun around to having to save a whole bunch of fuel, we have found ourselves in P5, passing Esteban Ocon, who's still on the soft compound tires, so that moves us up into P4 behind Sebastian Vettel. What if we didn't get spun out by Ricciardo? I don't even think we still would have been up there with Leclerc and Hamilton, but for sure a podium. We had come through to start the final lap of the Grand Prix, and with all the rain that had fallen on the circuit, we were able to easily get the field to where it needed to be. Lewis Hamilton would come through to win the Singapore Grand Prix. He's going to tie Sebastian Vettel in Singapore Grand Prix wins, and he's going to inch even closer to Max Verstappen in this World Drivers' Championship. Leclerc and Vettel would round out the podium here momentarily. Now, as you can see myself continuing to struggle in these intermediate tire conditions, Oscar Piastri, George Russell, Russell just behind here as we head towards the underpass now, as we're actually going to slam into the barrier, tear the front wing right off of the car. Overpass, I meant, not underpass here. Now suddenly we're struggling to make it to the end of this Grand Prix. We have no front wing. We have to get defensive here because here comes Piastri, and we have a little bit of no love lost for Piastri after the last season issues with him. Now as we're going to hold him off, but in controversial fashion, we crossed the line. It's going to be P4, but I didn't want Piastri to pass me there after deciding he wasn't going to come back to the team simply because we weren't good enough, and then we've been beating him all season long. So P4 here in Singapore, driver of the day. Let's head to the podium.
So Mercedes have won it, and what a great race it was. So Natalie, what do you think helped them deliver this result?
I think it was clear what the main contributing factor out of the track was: speed. It sounds like an awfully reductive statement, but fast cars win races, and we saw that today with our win.
And I can see the drivers starting to approach the podium for the victory celebrations. A real team victory today. Everybody played their part. Congratulations then to Mercedes.
What a Grand Prix. One of the, more naturally chaotic ones, we'll call it. It was because of weather instead of, AI running into each other, crashing each other, etc. It was the weather causing the chaos here today, and it certainly put on a show with Hamilton, Leclerc, Sebastian Vettel on the podium. Vettel has been really, really strong lately. However, too late in the season for him to really get things going for a World Drivers' Championship push, but he's certainly helping Red Bull Porsche secure that Constructors' Championship here. But ever since the summer break, when we've returned with Spa, he's been so strong, obviously, with now winning some Grand Prix as well since that summer break, where earlier in the season, before the summer break, he couldn't win and he could barely finish on the podium. He had only picked up a couple of them. But you see the driver's standings gets closer and closer between Verstappen and Hamilton. But Hamilton, he's in a position where he cannot really afford a bad race. 21 points, one bad race takes him right back out of the mix. So he's going to have to hope maybe Verstappen has a rough race if he ends up having a rough one. But, I mean, that's still, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But you can see actually purchasing another fabrication upgrade there in the aerodynamics facility. And we continue to try and get some upgrades to the car here because we want to keep up with Alpine as well as the teams that are in front of us now. It is looking like, before we end the episode, it is looking like that there is not going to be any regulation changes going into the next season. We would have found out right around now. Now, there's still a potential that we find out within the next couple of Grand Prix, but if we don't find out by COTA, I'm pretty sure we can write it off at that point. So that is going to do it, though, for this episode of the F1 22 My Team Career Mode. What a performance in Singapore. We end up getting an awesome top 10 out of it, P4. Still short of our first podium, but we'll take it nonetheless. And if you guys enjoyed, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Those would all be very appreciated. In the next one, we'll see if Hamilton can get even closer to Verstappen in the Japanese Grand Prix. Just 5 races remain in the season, and it continues to tighten up for that World Drivers' Championship. I will see you guys all in the next one. Thank you so much one more time for watching, and I'll see you guys in Japan. Have a great day, everybody.